It was the age of flame trees, their implacable beauty claiming more surface than the sand. Lavish sunlight daubed each petal with pigment from the stars. A fruity blanket perfumed Sudan made a galaxy of delight. It was the age of the rose called by many names, in minds as simple as the reptilian, whose sole sport was blood drawn in death duels, whose games further dyed the landscape the hue of rich port. My name is Tade IPADEOLA. I'm a poet from Nigeria. Being a writer in Nigeria is lionized and respected. We have a lot of artists in the National Council of the Arts, and it's wonderful to know that people still value storytelling and the arts, the oral arts, even today. There's a thin line between being lionized and being turned into a photo opportunity. So there is a glamorization that is almost pornographic of big writers in Nigeria, which is really distracting and which is used by those who have an agenda to turn a writer into a propaganda machine. It's not new. It's been with us in Nigeria since the 60s. But that's the flip side of being so regarded and accruing so much capital in the culture. Nigeria is a land of plurality. There's so much variety of everything, food, music, the, uh, the literary arts. We have this outstanding, it's an embarrassment of riches, if I may say so. I trained as a lawyer eventually, but I only practice a very narrow aspect of that now, intellectual property. The bad aspect of that for writing is that law is very prescriptive in its use of language, and poetry is the exact opposite of that. It's frees, it breaks boundaries. So sometimes this need for order in what I write is almost stifling. The most pleasurable aspect of writing has to be the joy of capturing a moment, like a lyric moment in time, in any language. Um, there is absolutely nothing that compares to that feeling that, yeah, if you got close to it or you actually feel you apprehended the moment, it's great. It's really great. And the worst aspect of being a writer for me is the striving for that moment. The people don't realize that it's it takes quite a toll on you. I believe that the first responsibility of a writer is to write, and every other thing is secondary. In my country, we have this long tradition of writers who are also activists who are expected to weigh in on every issue that is topical or national at any given point in time. I think it's distracting. I think sometimes it hurts the cause for which the writer is brought in. Um, but also I understand why people want a writer to come in and say something. I think the state, especially in the global south, should actually do more for writing and literature than what is being done now. In the whole of Nigeria, 140 million plus people, we have less than 34 public libraries. So the impact of that lack of support for writing and the writers is huge. We can do residencies for writers. I believe we already lionize the writers towards the ends of their lives and give them national honors and make them national treasures. But I believe for younger writers, much younger writers, we can do quite a bit by way of encouraging their works into accession into public university school libraries. So a couple of years back, the Lagos Book and Arts Festival, which is the biggest book festival in Nigeria, asked me to review a book by Sinclair Lewis called It Can't Happen Here. It was written in 1935. I took on the task, as I usually take on the task of most reviews, book reviews. But midway into the book, I realized this is a very serious book with a lot of serious insight into how demagoguery becomes what it becomes in any society. It changed my take on what is fiction, what I was biased for the aesthetics of writing, but I saw, okay, beyond the aesthetics, writers actually do possess almost a prophetic insight into how societies change, how the forces within any society interplay, and how to anticipate and maybe help society out of all these negative tendencies that eventually produce despotism, demagoguery, and tyranny. The first was scholarly, my first scholarly paper on Wole Soyinka's translation of the oldest Yoruba novel. I called it The Interpreter as Translator and the Technique of Translation. Okay, so yeah, that was my first. I completed that yesterday. I'm so happy I did that. The second is a collection of poems which I am so glad I embarked upon immediately I came here. I'm calling it Cold Brew. And it's going to be my poems on what I've seen in America and what I make of my American stay. I think this is a special country. This is my first time in the United States. And if the United States is a special country, Iowa City has to be the most special of all places. Not only because everybody says writing is normal for the first time in a city, I mean, which is strange for somebody coming from the global south. You're most probably seen as the black sheep of the family, the odd one out, maybe the fringe lunatic if you're a writer in those societies. But here, writing is completely normal, and people actually ask you what you are up to, which is great. I would love to come back someday in the future when my books about my stay in Iowa City has been published.